All right, so we are here with the main attraction today, Mr. Bob Haro. Bob, thank you for coming to the Riders Life, and thank you for coming to the Hurstbridge Bike Show and Shine today. Now, a little bit overwhelmed with all the bikes and all the people?
It's overwhelmed in a good way. It's been a great show. Pretty amazing, just the participation and the passion. So it's been super cool. Yeah,
it is, and it is one of those shows that's family driven. They definitely try to allow any type of person to bring their bikes and show the enthusiasm from years ago, and getting people like yourself involved with the show helps with the old school era and letting everyone know where it all began. So for you, back in your day, now you were one of the original pioneers of the freestyle bike riding.
Yep.
Tell us, in your time, in your town, what was that like back then?
Well, I think, this is again late 70s and early 80s. The sport of freestyle BMX was brand new. And as I was saying earlier to some of the people here, it is, BMX racing was full on then.
Yep.
Everybody was, BMX racing was the popular sport of the time. So I was kind of this rogue rider that was a BMX racer, but really was a better show-off. And being a show-off kind of contributes to being, freestyle rider. Being a kid that grew up in Southern California, where I lived in our neighborhood, in our town, there were skate parks all over the place. So we used to skateboard there, and we skated, but I also BMX'd. And of the two, I was a better BMX rider. So, but I learned tricks out of skateboarding, and I brought them and adopted them and brought them into riding my BMX bike. And that's kind of the really innocent birth of freestyle BMX. So what we learned riding in bowls and banks and all this stuff. And when the parks closed down in the late 70s, early 80s, we just transitioned to making our own ramps and things like that. And all of a sudden the sport of freestyle was now portable.
Yes.
So it was kind of all these little baby steps, and then moments in time that happened that changed the course. With parks closing, we built ramps. Now we could take freestyle and go anywhere in the world with it.
Yes, and of course you had your tours that you do around America.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that and who some of the people you used to tour around with.
So back then, again, late 70s, I was working for a magazine called BMX Action Magazine, which was the premier magazine in the sport of BMX. And it was the first publication, and I was the staff artist there. I was a cartoonist, illustrator. So I worked there. And then the other side of my job was I was one of the test riders.
Yes.
So working at the magazine, one of the founder, his name is Bob Osborne. He had a son named RL, and RL was he was a very talented rider, and RL and I became best of friends and rode together all the time. So him and I, we started actually one of the very first trick teams. That's what they called it before it was called freestyle. And we basically were doing demos, and the demos that we did were at BMX races. So there'd be a big BMX meet, and in between maybe the halftime when they are tallying all the points for the winners, we would put on a demonstration. And at that time it was pretty basic and pretty simple tricks, and we had a couple ramps, and but we were kind of blowing minds right out of the gate, and a lot of guys that maybe were racers decided, hey, I want to do freestyle instead.
Yeah, definitely. And then obviously moving right along, you were able to, with all your tours and that, get picked up by certain people who were sort of seeing this transition from the racing to the freestyle and the riding. And of course you've come along and been approached by what was the movie coming into ET, I believe.
Yeah.
And you had, you guys were hooked up with that. How did that all come about?
So ET came about a little later. My career as a BMX rider started to progress. I started getting more notoriety as as an illustrator in the magazines, as a test pilot in the magazines, and also as this freestyle guy. So I was kind of carving out my own little niche, if you will, in BMX. And the movie happened. I just happened to get a call one day. I came back to my office, and there was a note on my desk from my secretary that said somebody called wanted to see if you wanted to be in a movie. And I looked at it, and it was a note from a gentleman named Jerem Schwartz. I remember his name. And I looked at it, and I didn't think too much of it at first, and then later called, and I went to a casting call up in the Valley in Los Angeles, and it was in the same location where the film was shot, and that was in Porter Ranch, which is in the Valley in Los Angeles. So I went out to the casting call, and I met with the people there. They do the standard thing, take headshots and get a little bio on you. And then we had to ride. We had to ride down those terraces, the famous terraces that you see in the movie E.T. And I got the gig, you know. So yeah, it was a little bit of a serendipitous kind of moment, but yeah, it's kind of fun to look back on it.
Oh,
and,
definitely.
it turned out it wasn't called E.T. when we worked on the film. The movie was called A Boy's Life. So that was on the slates when they do the camera.
Yep.
You know, it said A Boy's Life on it. And we didn't really know that it was going to be ultimately called E.T. And so it was just kind of some dumb luck and right place,
definitely.
right time. And I replied to a phone call, and you know, I got into a film that turned out to be a fairly big deal, and a movie
Indeed.
classic. And for the BMX community, E.T. was a great film that gave the sport a big push and a big global push of awareness to BMX. So.
Yep. No, mate. What you've done for the sport, you know, where it be that you've pushed the industry with the freestyle side of things. You're now obviously traveling around trying to help build the sport and get notoriety to all the people who have been collecting for so many years, you know, now, and you know, following in the footsteps. I mean, obviously the transition now, everyone's stepping up on one another, but it all came from those original stepping stones from yourself and the group of guys that you used to hang around with. You know, it's a big hat off to you. And we can't be any more happier than to have you down here in Melbourne and, you know, at this Hurstbridge bike show. It's been an absolute honour, and thank you very much for your time on the Rider's Life, mate.
Thank you.
Take my hat off to you, mate. You're a great
you.
bloke, and we've had an absolute ball down here at the Hurstbridge Bike Show and Shine. I'm hoping next year's as good as this, but we'll see how we go. All right, guys, thank you.
And thank you.